Caribbean Sea, July 2025. The Coast Guard spots a mysterious blue boat, almost completely submerged. No flag, no markings. It's moving suspiciously slowly. Officers approach, knock on the hatch, and board the vessel. Inside, there isn't a single person, only video cameras, complex electronics, and a Starlink satellite antenna. When experts realized the true purpose of this vessel, they were stunned. It was the world's first fully unmanned narco submarine, remotely controlled from some office thousands of kilometers away. And this vessel had become the high-tech peak of a criminal evolution that has been going on for a quarter of a century. In just over 20 years, drug cartels have created a true underwater empire, the scale of which is hard to imagine. The story of this empire started almost like a joke, but by 2025, it had become a never-ending nightmare for law enforcement agencies around the world. Late 1980s. A strange object washes up on the coast of Florida, a 20-meter-long homemade metal coffin with a motor. This was the first narco submarine in history. People laughed at how crude it was and forgot about it. After all, what kind of threat could come from a pile of welded scrap metal? But no one could have imagined what it would turn into. By the early 2000s, the jungles of Colombia saw the rise of the first serious drug submarines. Built for one purpose only, to carry narcotics. They were called low-profile vessels, made of fiberglass at secret shipyards hidden beneath the jungle canopy along the Pacific coast. Inside, 5 crew members, a diesel engine, and up to 7 tons of cocaine. The crew slept on bags of drugs, breathed through a small hole in the roof, and prayed the engine wouldn't fail in the middle of the ocean. That's why they called these pathetic boats floating coffins. But even back then, the Cartels' engineering tricks were impressive. The subs were painted in dull greenish gray to blend in with the ocean. Only half a meter of the hull stuck out above the water, usually invisible to radar, satellites, and even Coast Guard patrols, who often mistook them for floating trash. One of these boats cost around $500,000 to build, but the cargo inside could be worth up to $400 million. The math was simple. Early routes took about a week, from the Colombian coast to Panama or Mexico, but the cartels quickly learned the golden rule of business. If something works, scale it up. Why travel only 1,000 kilometers when you could travel 10,000? In 2008, the U.S. Coast Guard detected 42 such vessels near Central America in just 6 months. Analysts estimated that 85 similar trips could have delivered more than 500 tons of cocaine to the U.S. alone. But the most incredible part was still ahead. By the 2010s, narco submarines began to cross the Atlantic. The route from the Brazilian Amazon to Galicia, Spain, 6,500 kilometers across the entire Atlantic, took 1 month. In 2019, the Spanish Coast Guard intercepted one such vessel off the coast of Galicia after 27 days at sea. On board were 3 exhausted men and cocaine worth $139 million. When inspectors climbed inside, they saw a floating hell. No comforts, frayed wires hung from the ceiling, the engine was crammed into a tiny cabinet, and there was no toilet at all. For a whole month, the men had slept on the bare floor between pipes and fuel tanks. Yet this crude machine had made it halfway across the planet, completely avoiding all tracking systems. And that's when the real technology race began. The submarines grew bigger and smarter every year. Ballast systems for full submersion appeared, cameras on retractable snorkels, and advanced navigation equipment. Some models learned to disappear completely underwater, leaving only a thin air intake above the surface. These advanced snorkel subs cost up to $2 million, could carry 8 tons of cargo, and became true ghosts of the ocean. Here's a fact that even shocks experts. Not a single snorkel sub has ever been caught in open water, only on land after unloading. One such vessel, Poseidon, was found submerged in 2023 off the Spanish coast. 22 meters long, a carbon fiber hull, and nothing inside, just empty compartments. The crew had vanished with the cargo, leaving behind only a ghostly shell. Then the cartels made a move that stunned intelligence agencies. In 2020, deep in the Colombian jungle, a 12-meter-long electric submarine was discovered. It cost $1.5 million. It had 10 tons of batteries, 2 silent electric motors, and an underwater range of 55 kilometers, all without making a sound. But the real genius was in the details. This submarine had a towing ring. A large ship would pull it across the ocean like an invisible trailer, then detach it near the coast. From there, it would sail on its own, completely silent with no exhaust, like an underwater ghost. And then, in the summer of 2025, a technological breakthrough changed the rules forever. That same blue boat off the coast of Colombia belonged to the Clan del Golfo, the country's largest drug empire. The submarine was controlled via Starlink satellites, equipped with cameras inside and out, and was capable of carrying 1.5 tons of cocaine to any point on the planet. It was piloted by an operator sitting safely thousands of kilometers away. One person could control a dozen of these vessels at once. No one could be arrested, questioned, or bribed. The boat was empty. It was a test run, a systems check before the full-scale launch of underwater drones. Researchers from the Colombian Institute for Development and Peace uncovered a stunning fact. Mexican cartels had begun hiring tech experts and engineers to build unmanned submarines as early as 2017. 8 years of secret development, and now the result was out in the ocean. Having no crew solved one of the biggest problems in the drug business: the risk of captured sailors turning informants. Plus, there was no more need to convince people to climb into floating coffins. But the most alarming part, this technology spread beyond South America at lightning speed. Soon, the Indian Coast Guard seized a vessel near the Andaman Islands carrying $4.5 billion worth of methamphetamine. That astronomical amount exceeds the entire GDP of Madagascar or Iceland. Just imagine the scale of modern drug trafficking. The value of the drugs in one submarine is greater than the budget of an entire country. The vessel was remotely operated via Starlink and had come from the jungles of Myanmar. Local syndicates had simply copied Colombian blueprints and adapted them to Asian conditions. In Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, rivers are now filled with mini submarines disguised as simple fishing buoys. They're controlled by radio and surface at night off the coasts of Malaysia and Indonesia to unload their illegal cargo. Recently, Spanish police caught 3 unmanned underwater drones in the Strait of Gibraltar, each carrying 200 kilograms of hashish from Morocco. The technology of unmanned narco-subs is spreading across the planet faster than any virus. Today, these underwater machines are cruising every ocean on Earth. The classic routes, from Colombia through Panama to the US, or from Brazil through the Canary Islands to Europe. But new extreme routes have emerged, across the Pacific Ocean, straight to Australia. In November 2024, a joint intelligence operation called Orion, involving 62 countries, uncovered this supply channel. A submarine carrying 5 tons of cocaine was intercepted 2,000 kilometers from Clipperton Island. It was headed for Sydney and Auckland. During the course of this massive operation, law enforcement managed to seize 225 tons of cocaine on land and sea, a world record. But the result was almost meaningless. The amount of cocaine on the streets didn't go down. The explanation is simple. 1 kilogram of cocaine in Australia sells for $240,000, almost 6 times the US price. With profit margins like that, cartels are willing to cross half the planet and build submarines by the hundreds. Captain Manuel Rodriguez from Colombia's anti-narcotics unit admitted to journalists, the Pacific route has become a new reality. Sometimes they spot drug submarines in the open ocean, nearly 5,000 kilometers from the Colombian coast with maps of Australia on board. And recently, there were reports of whale-shaped mini-subs that are transported aboard cargo ships to Cyprus, dropped in international waters, and then remotely steered toward the European coast. In 2024, law enforcement intercepted a record 30 narco-subs, but each successful delivery inspires criminals to build dozens more. This is no longer a regional problem of the Caribbean Sea. It's a global underwater war. The cartel's strategy is brilliantly simple. Overwhelm the entire law enforcement system. Launch 100 submarines at once, hoping at least 10 will reach their destination. European ports process 90 million containers per year, but only a maximum of 10% can be physically inspected. The Coast Guard has thermal cameras, patrol planes, and satellites. But the ocean is endless, and the number of underwater vessels is growing. The statistics are brutal. The U.S. Coast Guard intercepts only 11% of narco subs on the Eastern Pacific route. If the crews spot Navy ships, they open drain valves. The submarine sinks with all the evidence. In February 2025, an officer from Trinidad drowned during the inspection of a narco submarine when smugglers opened the hull right under the Special Forces' feet. For unbelievable profits, the crews of these submarines are ready to risk their lives. In 2023, Colombians found a ghost ship drifting in the Pacific Ocean. 2 crew members had died in the engine room, poisoned by diesel exhaust. Spanish agents who patrol the Atlantic daily admit their helplessness. Criminal organizations are always one step ahead. In 5 years, only 3 submarines were caught off the coast of Galicia, but experts estimate that at least 100 more slipped through unnoticed. That's a ratio of 1 to 30, and with the rise of unmanned technology, that ratio is only going to get worse. Law enforcement calls every interception a victory, but the reality is very different. Cartels continue to load tons of cocaine into homemade submarines because the method keeps working. For every sub that's caught, dozens make it through. Today, the drug trade has turned into a high-tech corporation with its own fleet and research departments. Submarines are designed with computer software, built in parts at various locations, and then assembled in jungle camps with full sleeping quarters for engineers. The cost of building one can reach $3 million, taking up to a year of non-stop work. Yet criminals build them faster than authorities can study the captured ones. Operation Orion revealed a terrifying truth. The cartels no longer fight each other, they cooperate. Mexican groups now work with Colombian, Brazilian, Ecuadorian, Peruvian, European, and Pacific networks. These are no longer scattered gangs. They're successful international corporations. The capabilities of modern narco submarines are truly staggering. The range from Colombia to Australia is 12,000 kilometers without refueling. One sub captured in late 2024 was found 5,500 kilometers from its home coast, with detailed maps of Australian ports loaded into its navigation system. The economics of single-use submarines may sound insane, but the math is solid. Despite a $2 million construction cost, many vessels are intended for one mission only. After unloading, they're either sunk or abandoned. A cargo worth $400 million easily justifies the loss. One captured drug lord, Laureano Ubiña, spoke of an entire underwater graveyard of sunken submarines near the Canary Islands. Global drug statistics destroy any illusions of winning this war. Record seizures, thousands of couriers arrested, and billions spent on coast guards have barely affected street drug prices. In 2024, the production, confiscation, and consumption of cocaine reached historic highs. Because this is no longer a war against people, it's a war against technology. Admiral Rojo of the Colombian Navy explained what's really happening. The move to autonomous submarines shows that drug traffickers are evolving toward complex, unmanned systems. These machines are nearly impossible to detect in the open ocean, can't be tracked by radar, and allow criminal networks to operate with minimal risk. Experts are certain that in 5 years, such submarines will become cheaper and more reliable, and trips from South America to Australia will become routine. Try to grasp the scale of this disaster. In just 25 years, narco submarines have evolved from pathetic floating coffins to a fleet of high-tech, unmanned ghosts with satellite links, silently cruising every ocean on Earth. The world's most powerful nations, with their navies, satellites, and billion-dollar budgets, are helpless against jungle-made genius. In this underwater war, drug lords aren't just winning, they've crushed their enemies without even entering open battle. Somewhere out there, in the darkness of the ocean, another blue boat is moving right now. No crew, no fear, no chance of being detected. It knows the route, the destination, and the simple truth: nothing can stop it. Since the first known transatlantic voyage in 2019, only 12 submarines carrying illegal cargo bound for European and Australian shores have been caught. 8 of those were in 2024 to 2025. How many of these underwater monsters are heading toward your coast right now? Dozens? Hundreds? Maybe thousands? Drug lords have launched an entire fleet of unmanned killing machines with modern satellite control, while military admirals are still debating which buttons to press. That's how the narco mafia turned the world's navies into a pathetic joke.